All right, let's jump the map now to New York, where rapper Kid Cudi, whose legal name is Scott Mescudi, just finished testifying in the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs. CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman reports from outside that courthouse on what he told the jurors about his relationship with Combs and his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura.
Today's courtroom scene in the Sean Diddy Combs trial was explosive, and it might be a turning point in the racketeering case against him. Kid Cudi, a key witness, took the stand and delivered testimony that left the courtroom stunned. What he described wasn't just a celebrity feud or a messy breakup. It sounded like something out of a crime thriller, complete with home invasions, threats, and even a firebombed car. According to Cudi, things took a dark and dangerous turn after Diddy found out he was seeing Cassie, shortly after she and Diddy ended their long relationship. Cudi testified that not long after, around Christmas, Diddy and an associate allegedly broke into his home. He described how they rummaged through Gucci gift boxes, presents Cudi had bought for Cassie, and even went so far as to lock his dog in the bathroom during the break-in.
The police report, Bernarda, a break-in to Kid Cudi's home in 2011. Does this actually matter?
It does matter in the sense of not really the break-in, but the arson part of it. But the break-in just leads you to believe, like, Jesus, how demented is Sean Combs? And I think that is what the prosecution was trying to drill to this jury, to show how his jealousy, his anger, his rage, and his being possessive over Cassie, like how far he's willing to go. And I think that's exactly what was the strategy of the prosecution, in addition to, of course, what was important, the arson part, in order to meet that racketeering conspiracy part, because breaking and entering is not part of it.
As bizarre and unsettling as that was, what came next was even more disturbing. Cudi told the court that Diddy's own assistant casually called him later and said, "Looks like your house got burglarized by Diddy." Cudi said he never confronted Diddy directly out of fear for his safety. Instead, he quietly filed a police report. A report that until now had been buried in silence. Then came the moment that shook the courtroom. Just 12 days after that alleged break-in, someone threw a Molotov cocktail into the sunroof of Cudi's Porsche. It didn't explode fully, but the message was loud and clear. This wasn't a coincidence. Cudi never got a formal explanation, but he says Diddy later offered a vague apology, saying something along the lines of, "Sorry for some things I did." That apology, Cudi implied, was the closest thing to an admission he ever got. Now, the legal question hanging in the air. Does all of this amount to racketeering? Prosecutors believe it might. To prove racketeering, they must demonstrate that Diddy wasn't just acting out as an angry ex. They need to show a clear pattern of criminal behavior, organized and intentional, part of a larger operation. In other words, they need to convince the jury that Diddy wasn't just impulsive, but orchestrating a criminal enterprise. Diddy's defense, meanwhile, is expected to push back hard on that narrative. Their likely argument? Yes, maybe Diddy acted out in a fit of rage, but that doesn't make him the leader of an organized crime ring. They'll argue this is more unhinged ex-boyfriend than mob boss. Dangerous? Maybe, but criminal conspiracy? That's the line they'll say hasn't been crossed.
I think it's a little bit difficult, though, for the government in this sense, though, because I think they might lose the forest from the trees in the sense of, if this was always a domestic abuse relationship, which they have said it is, and they have all these incidences of domestic abuse, where are we separating from when it's just simple abuse that doesn't lead to a freak-off and abuse that does lead into a freak-off? Because we have all these incidences of abuse, but not always leading to, I'm doing this so you participate in a freak-off.
But all you need is one. All you need is one when you're talking about sex trafficking or transportation to engage in prostitution. All I need is one freak off that was where she wasn't a willing participant, where she didn't consent to in order to make out the charges.
The courtroom was left buzzing. If the jury believes Cudi, the implications for Diddy are massive. This trial is no longer just about celebrity gossip or bad behavior. It's about fear, control, and whether one of hip-hop's biggest names used his power to run a violent criminal machine. Adding even more heat to the day's drama was an unexpected voice from behind bars. Suge Knight, the former Death Row Records boss, currently serving time for a fatal hit-and-run, weighed in on the case with a phone call from prison. Suge and Diddy have a long and bitter history, and his take, as wild and unfiltered as you'd expect, only fanned the flames around the case. Here's what prosecutors are laying out. They claim Diddy got word from his security team that Suge Knight was at Mel's Diner on Sunset Boulevard. Without hesitation, Diddy reportedly grabbed not one, not two, but 3 guns, told his assistant to get in the car, and tore off down Sunset to confront him. But by the time he arrived, Suge was gone. From the sources we got to know, Suge Knight shared his take from behind bars. According to him, if Diddy really rolled up with 3 guns, there's no doubt he was ready for something serious to go down. Suge put it bluntly. If he had 3 guns in that car, something was gonna happen. Believe me, if he pulled up and saw me, somebody was getting hurt. You don't bring 3 guns unless you're ready to use them. Suge also talked about the mindset behind the scenes. The fear, the paranoia, the heavy drinking and drug use. You got guys drinking, doing drugs, and scared. That's when they carry guns, not to flex, to shoot. It's a raw description of a toxic feud between 2 camps, Bad Boy and Death Row. 2 rival empires, both driven by power and pride, teetering on the edge of violence. One of the questions that's floating around now is, why haven't prosecutors called Suge Knight to testify? His words paint a picture of more than personal drama. It's a turf war, organized, hostile, and potentially deadly. That fits the definition of racketeering. And yet, he's not on the witness list. Then court took another turn today. A hotel manager from the La Hermitage Hotel took the stand and testified that Diddy used fake names to book rooms. Prosecutors say this shows a pattern of secretive behavior, coordinated movements, and a desire to hide his tracks. But honestly, booking a hotel room under an alias doesn't scream racketeering. It could just be a celebrity trying to sneak in a wild night without the paparazzi finding out. Now, while the headlines focus on Molotov cocktails, break-ins, and the chaos around Kid Cudi, the real legal threat might come from something else entirely, charges involving coercion and trafficking. That's where federal prosecutors are really sharpening their knives. They're saying Diddy used his personal staff, drivers, assistants, people on his payroll to secure drugs and arrange for women to travel across state lines for sex. That's not just bad behavior. That's organized, that's systemic, and in a racketeering case, what matters most is showing a pattern. And if enough people say he did this and did it often, that's the kind of pattern that brings someone down. Then there's the serious accusation that Diddy arranged for a woman to be flown in from another state for sexual purposes. That's not just questionable, it crosses a federal boundary. Add in the claims of manipulation, coercion, or using money as control. And now you're looking at something much bigger than just tabloid drama. You're deep in federal crime territory. Sources close to the case say prosecutors are building their argument around the idea that this wasn't just one man acting out, it was a coordinated operation. They're painting a picture of Diddy not as a lone figure, but as someone pulling the strings of an entire system, with employees acting on his behalf. Drivers, assistants, staff all allegedly helping carry out his plans. But the defense? They're pushing back hard. They're saying this is chaos, not conspiracy. That if people acted questionably, they weren't doing so under direct orders like soldiers in some criminal army. They argue it's a misinterpretation or worse, a deliberate smear of how celebrities operate under pressure and scrutiny. From behind the scenes, we're hearing Diddy's camp is calling this whole thing a vendetta, a media-fueled hit job, twisting eccentric celebrity behavior into something sinister. But here's the thing. When you zoom out, the claims of coercion may be what hurt him the most. Not just because they're serious, but because they cut to something deeper: emotional manipulation, isolation, and control. That's the point where this stops looking outrageous and starts looking predatory. And if a jury buys that Diddy used his fame and wealth to control people's choices, to limit their freedom, to dominate their lives, then sympathy fades fast. That's when courtroom whispers turn into verdicts. Look at what's really at stake here. This isn't just about whether Diddy is guilty or not. It's about what this means for his legacy and for the image of power in hip-hop. Diddy isn't just a music mogul, he's a cultural icon. Bad Boy Records wasn't just a label, it was a revolution. From chart-topping hits to fashion to TV to global branding, he built an empire. But now that empire's under the microscope, and whether or not he's convicted, the conversation around him has already shifted. Words like manipulation, violence, and intimidation are being repeated in courtrooms, and they don't go away easily. And it's not just about Diddy. The entire hip-hop industry is watching closely. Because if prosecutors land a racketeering conviction here, if they convince a jury that behind the fame and flash is an organized criminal network, that sends a message. It says that power in this space can be prosecuted, not just celebrated. One last thing that really sticks is Suge Knight once explained why people bring guns to confrontations. And it wasn't to flex or show strength, It was because they were afraid. When you're scared, you bring a gun, he said. And that might be the heart of this whole trial, not just about who holds power, but who's driven by fear, who uses that fear, and who ends up paying for it. No matter what the verdict is, one thing's for sure: the music industry and the man once known as Puff Daddy will never be seen the same way again.